Welcome back to the final episode of our AI automation series. Today we're going to look under the hood of an AI agent. But first let's clarify. AI agent is a term that kind of means different things to different people. Some say a true AI agent operates completely independently, making decisions and actions without any human intervention. However, in everyday use, most people refer to a kind of automated system that uses AI to make decisions, usually structured as a kind of main agent supported by specialized sub-agents as AI agents. And for most of my clients looking for AI agents, that's what they're after. So for the purposes of this video, that's exactly what we're going to look at. So how is an AI agent structured? Well, a typical structure of an AI agent is a manager agent that coordinates and oversees multiple sub-agents. Each sub-agent has its own dedicated specific task. So you think of the manager like your automation CEO, assigning tasks to specialized employees, the sub-agents, each skilled in their own areas. So why do we structure it this way? Well, first of all, scalability. You can easily expand new tasks by adding a new sub-agent. Efficiency. Each sub-agent handles a very specific task exceptionally well. AI can get confused easily in muddy waters. Keep it super clear for them what exactly is expected of them. Maintainability. It's easy to figure out where something went wrong and debug it and adjust it. And communication, there's clear communication structures, it's easy to collaborate, it's smooth and straightforward. How do you build an AI agent? Well, the steps I would recommend taking are exactly the same as what we discussed last week when we looked at AI automations. And those were: define clear objectives for your agent, list and clarify the requirements, what actions can it perform, map out your automation visually. How are you going to structure your sub-agents? How many do you need? Select and configure the actual tools that you're going to use, and then as always test and as you launch your agent. So let's look at a real life example. I ran a webinar back in January where I outlined how an AI personal assistant agent could work. So let's have a look at that. So here is the example of the personal assistant and how it's kind of set up. So let me take you through it. So we have this manager agent who can delegate to each of these sub-agents. And in green here is the tools that they have access to. So in this case, the manager can send Slack messages. So this personal assistant was built on Slack, so you can ask it to do things via Slack and then it gives you the answer back via Slack. And then he has each of these sub-agents. So he has an inbox agent that can send emails, find emails, get email addresses, and get the date, which is important when you ask things like what are unread emails in my inbox from today. For example, you need to know what the day is. Calendar agent, so what he can do is get calendar events, create calendar events, obviously get email addresses to invite people to those events and get the date for the same reason. Then I have a Notion agent, so Notion is what I use for my project management, for task management, for notes management. And so actually that agent has some sub-agents. So there's a project agent that can find projects and create projects. I then have a task agent that can find tasks, create tasks or complete tasks, and a notes agent that can find notes or create notes. And then finally, an email responder agent. I don't really use this one, but it's there. And essentially what it can do is if I ask it to draft a response to an email, it can put together an initial draft for me. So how do you actually build these agents? Well, it's much easier than you think. There are a bunch of platforms out there that let you house the agents. You can program, in the loosest sense of the word, each agent and use the platform to make connections between the sub-agents and their tools. So let's look at part of the personal assistant AI agent that I just demoed. So here I am in Relevance AI, which is one of the many platforms that you can choose to use as an AI agent builder. There's lots of different choices out there. They all have different tools and different functionalities, but conceptually they're kind of the same. So you can build each of the different layers. You can build your tools, which are then attached to or are given access to for a sub-agent or a main agent. And then of course the hierarchy between each of your agents, so they know where to pass information. So let's look into one specific section of it, rather than if I did the whole thing, this video would be hours and hours long. So let's have a look at the task manager. So an example flow within the agent would be that, let's say I asked Slack, so I could either write a message into Slack or do a voice note into Slack saying, tell me all of the tasks that I have due for today, could be an example. What would then happen is that message would go into the manager agent. The manager agent would look at it and go, this is related to tasks. The Notion, I know that the Notion manager looks after tasks, I'll delegate it to him. The Notion manager would then say, this is related to tasks, I'll delegate it to the task manager. And then the task manager would work out which tools do I need to use to retrieve the information that's just, or perform the task that's just been requested of me. So in this case, he would translate the message into retrieve tasks or get tasks, and due date equals today. So he would also work out what today's date is using a tool to understand what he needs to retrieve and send back to the Notion manager, and then of course back to the manager agent, which then sends a Slack message back to me saying, here's all your tasks that are due for today. Likewise, I could ask it to add a task, I could ask it to complete a task, depending on what tools I've given it and what I want to get done. So let's have a look at the Task Manager agent. So here you can see the configuration of each of the different agents from within that chart that I just showed you. So if we deep dive into the Task Manager, you can see here each of these different programs have a slightly different setup, but essentially you kind of almost have the different layers that you can kind of fill in more or less. So here I've told it, your Task Manager, it gets, adds and completes tasks in Notion databases. And then we can have a look at the tools it has and the instructions that it has. So here is the instructions that I've written for it. Usually kind of follow fairly similar format, keeping it as simple as possible whilst being comprehensive. So I've told it the role, so you're an expert Notion database manager for Rebecca Wilson. You can get, complete and add tasks to Rebecca's tasks database in Notion. You are a sub-agent of Rebecca's personal assistant. You will be triggered when your manager agent is delegating a task to you, and your job as a task manager is to perform the actions on her behalf to create, get, complete tasks to or from Rebecca's Notion pages. Depending on the task given to you, you will have to identify which tools to use, in what order. Then you will always report back to your manager agent. Some examples of tasks could be, please add task to project, or please mark task as complete. Standard operating procedure. Of course, this depends on the task, but you will always think step by step to achieve it. And then I've told it these are the three tools that you've got access to. So one to add tasks, one to create tasks, and one to retrieve tasks. We'll have a look at one of those in a second. And then I've just given it some kind of key information. So this is a fairly simple one because it doesn't have huge amounts of things to do, but you get the kind of gist. Sometimes they can be huge, big, long instructions. And then we have each of the tools that I've told it has access to. So it's got add task, retrieve task, and complete task. So let's have a look, for example, at add task. So you can see what it would do. So here I can get under the hood. So basically what would happen is within these input parameters, the agent would have deduced from my instructions that information and passed it along. So if I'm wanting to add a task, it looks like it needs the project name. So for context, in my Notion, the way I've set it up is I have a series of different projects which then have notes and tasks within them. So every task needs to have some kind of project name. So either I will have told it, please add a task to project XYZ, or it would have worked out it doesn't have the project name and it would go and search for the project first using the project agent and then come back here and delegate it here. Or this agent would say, I don't have the task, I don't have the project name, and send it back saying, please can you tell me the project name before I can proceed. So that piece of information would be passed. The task obviously needs to get passed, and then what the due date is needs to get passed, and I've given it specific instructions of the kind of formatting to use for that. So these three pieces of information would get passed to this sub-agent, and then in this case it actually pings to make.com to run the task and passes those three parameters along. So in make, I then have a fairly simple automation. So what happens is when this this URL is triggered, that will trigger what's called a webhook, which is just basically a way of passing information along the internet, and then it runs through a series of different actions. So I suspect this is, so if we've defined a due date, it goes down one route. If we've not defined a due date, it goes through another. And so basically then it searches for the project. Once it's found the project, it'll create the database item and add it to that project, and then ping back to the tool. And when it pings back to the tool, that will then get passed back to the task agent. The task agent will pass it to the Notion manager, and then Notion manager will pass it to the manager, which will then trigger the tool for the Slack message to get sent back to the user to say, I have added your task to project XYZ with a due date of tomorrow, or whatever you've requested in the first place. So you can imagine that once you've sort of thought through the structure of like, what are all the tools, what are all my sub-agents, it's then really just about creating the instructions and fail safes and things so that things can get passed backwards and forwards in the correct way. So that's it. Now you've seen firsthand how an AI agent setup practically looks, why it's crucial to structure your system with a clear hierarchy, the importance of clear communication between your agents, and why this structured modular approach makes automations easier to maintain, easier to scale and improve over time. So I do encourage you to explore building your own simple agent to kind of really experience the power and flexibility firsthand. If you are just getting started, head over to YouTube. There are a ton of follow along as you build videos that are massively helpful. And that's it for our series. If you've enjoyed it, do subscribe or leave a comment. Please reach out with any questions. If you've missed any episodes, there will be links to them all somewhere around this video. Thanks for joining me, and happy automating.